Hey, I'm going to tell you about the time that I accidentally made $20,000 after somebody died and another person went to prison for the rest of their life. It sounds crazy, but I'm going to explain everything and I'm going to even show you how you can do the same thing without having to have anybody die or go to prison. But first, why should you listen to me? My name is Brennan Wiersma. I'm an airline pilot and a high income professional that got in a bunch of student debt. Still working on paying that student debt off, but in the process, I've become an expert on personal finance and my own finances. I'm sharing the tips and strategies with you that I'm using to help get that debt gone and master my money. So if that's something you're interested in, please stick around, watch more videos. If not, move on. No hard feelings. So how did I actually make $20,000? Well, this story starts out in Prescott Valley, Arizona, where I was flight instructing, teaching people to fly. In my off time, I would find real estate deals and either fix them up and sell them or find buyers that would be willing to buy them from me. And I would basically be doing sort of house flipping, if you will. So I would, after I finished up 8 hour full day work, go home, I'd get in my car and I'd drive around the worst areas of my city and find properties that had a bunch of damage or looked vacant or had boards on the window or needed a lot of work. And I'd get a list of these properties. I'd go back home and skip trace them, which is where you figure out the owners of the properties, their phone numbers, email addresses. And I would just sit down and for 2 or 3 hours at a time and cold call these property owners and see if they were interested in selling. A lot of times these people are more motivated than the average homeowner because their properties are problem properties. They're damaged. They have tenants that don't want to move out or fill in the blank headache associated with them. They're not even good enough to have pictures taken of them if they were to be sold on the open market. These are problem properties that are really only fit for a cash buyer to, come in and make the process easy, a lot of times at a discounted amount because they're not buying the property for what it potentially could be worth. They're buying it for what it's currently worth. And the investor is going to go and fix it up and put in all the legwork and sweat equity to get the property to be in a spot where it's worth what it could be. And so that's where I come in. So I'm cold calling these properties and I find one that is a mobile home. I think it's a double wide in a rough area. And the person that owns it, it's a rental property. There's tenants living inside and it's just been a headache for her. And so I offer her $100,000 to buy her property. And she agrees on that price. Actually, originally she didn't agree. And eventually, after follow up, she came around to it and thought, yeah, $100,000, that works. So I put the property under contract for $100,000. And being in that area, having done real estate deals, I had a network of people that were looking for that type of property and thought that they could be the one to fix it up or whatever it is. And it was going for around 110 to 115, where the interest is where was the price point that people were interested in. And I actually brought it to my mentor in the area who I had done previous deals with. And he was interested in buying it for, I think it was $110,000. So what we did was I assigned the rights to buy that contract or that property to my buyer, and the paperwork went into escrow. And from there, after the money goes in, changes hands, it all gets sent around. I would get the difference between what I had it under contract for and what the investor was willing to pay for it. So I would get that $10,000. During that process, we had to do our due diligence and also figure out how we were going to deal with the tenants that were inside. Now, what we figured out was that at that price, based on what the rent was, it would actually work as a long-term investment for my buyer to just buy it and hold it and keep the tenants in place if they were willing to pay what the new rent would be. Because the current owner had the property and hadn't increased rent in a while or really done any work to the property. So what we were going to do is stop by the property, talk to the tenants there and figure out if they would be willing to pay a higher amount. If not, what that process would look like of getting them to move out of the property. So we went there, really nice people, obviously kind of dealing with some stuff, but more or less easy enough to talk to and go through this new rental agreement. At the end of the conversation, they decided, yep, we can make that new rent work and we would like to stay in the property. So we said, okay, great. Let's go ahead and move forward with this whole transaction. And I believe it was part of our agreement was we were going to wait for 1 month rent to come through just to show that they were able to make that payment, and then the property would close and I'd get my $10,000. The investor would get the property and everything would go about their day and we'd all be happy. But as you might expect, that isn't exactly what happened. So sure enough, rent comes due and there's nothing. no payment, no wire comes through, and we have to go figure out what to do in this situation. So we go to the property, and nobody's there, and the neighbor of the property says, "Hey, do you do you know who lives here? Do you know what's going on?" I'm like, kind of not understanding what he's talking about. And I tell him, yeah, I'm actually under contract to buy the property. And he goes, oh, well, the SWAT team just raided this property yesterday. So you might want to look into that. Oh, great. What's going on here now? We eventually, I don't know exactly the chain of communication that we went through. I think I called the local police department and talked to them about what was going on. And they had informed me that the young man that we talked to in there, the tenant, was running a drug selling operation out of the house. Okay. So he got in trouble for selling drugs, and he was spending, it was a long time. It was at least 20 years in prison. And his wife, the other lady that we talked to, unfortunately, when she was taken, 'cause she was part of the whole thing, but when she was taken into custody, she didn't have any of her recreational drugs that she was using, heroin or cocaine or whatever it was. And she unfortunately ended up passing away from withdrawals. So now we're stuck in this unfortunate situation where the property is torn apart. The SWAT team went in there and just ripped everything out, and we don't know what this process is going to look like. Luckily, we were able to get in touch with the brother of the tenants, who was willing to just sign over the rights or whatever it was to the property at the set amount, and give us access to it. So in this scenario, the transaction was set to go forward as planned, except now, because we were going to have access to the property even sooner than we were expecting, completely unoccupied, the potential exit strategy changed for us in a sense, because now, well, we could just list this property without having to go through any of the move out process, the notices and everything. It was basically just ours. We essentially just had a whole bunch of crap in there, and a property that was kind of run down. Well, mobile homes in that area were selling for somewhere between $150,000 and $160,000. So me and my partner talked and decided that we could both partner on the deal and flip the property as a partnership and try to just sell it in a shorter amount of time. That might be our new most profitable exit strategy. Okay, so from going from thinking I was going to get 10 to thinking I was going to get none, and now this might end up working out a lot better. So what did we do? We contacted another investor who we had worked with before about funding this deal for us. So we were using private money to pay for the entire purchase of this property, the renovations, and then we had some holding costs associated with it. So we got a $115,000 private money loan, and I don't remember the interest we paid him. This was more than 5 years ago now, and we bought the property. We took title of the property, and we put in about $10,000 of renovation, basically just like completely gutting the whole thing, getting all the crap out of there, and then fixing things here and there to make a mobile home be able to be bought by a conventional loan was really the extent of the repairs that we did. So all in, we put in like $110,000. We listed it on the MLS, and sure enough, I think we ended up getting an offer for $165,000. And after closing costs and commissions and putting some away from taxes, I got a check for $20,000. So long story short, it ended up being a profitable deal for us. It was unfortunate how things worked out with the tenants and how, that played out. Not great, really, but that's kind of the people you end up dealing with when you're buying houses that were highly distressed. So if you yourself wanted to do some similar strategy, it's called real estate wholesaling. In this case, we ended up actually flipping the property, but I talk about that inside of my free school community. If you want to, there's tons of finance tips, and we do live calls and strategies and master classes. The link's going to be in the description, and we'll do live Q&As, and we'll talk about exactly how to do real estate wholesaling. But in this just to recap what we've went over here, basically all I did to make this $20,000 was I found a property that needed some work. I called the owner, put the property under contract at a discounted price, found somebody that was willing to pay a higher amount for it. And then after some craziness in the middle, was able to find the difference between what the seller was willing to sell for and what somebody was willing to buy it for. So if that's something you're interested in, the link's in the description, and I'd love to see you inside, and we'll see you in the next one.